So this week we are looking at Proverbs 3:21 through 26, and this is all about walking securely, and not walking securely in the way that the world often thinks, which is usually using safety as a means to control or restrict in some way. I'm sure we're very familiar with that. So many examples of that. But I won't necessarily be going into that, but how to walk securely as it is discussed in Proverbs and the rest of the Bible, especially Psalm 91. And I'll be including those either at the beginning of this or in the description below. What does it mean to really walk securely, and how can we do that? I mentioned that most people seek safety. They want to be safe, but the approach they take is usually taking the wide path, or trying to blend in, do what everybody else is doing, that sort of thing. But we see the results of that. How many people have anxiety and all sorts of issues still, even if they are taking the path that most people take. Proverbs 3:21 through 26 mentions sleeping well. Being able to sleep well is a sign that you are walking securely. And this is a security that God and the wisdom of God is your confidence, but also a reality that God is with you, and this is an active process. And it mentions that at the end of Proverbs 3:21 through 26. Especially Psalm 91, I think that pairs really well with this. As do a lot of the parables that Jesus tells, a lot of the stories. Almost every story has some sort of element of this. The story of David in the Old Testament, how even when he was on the run from Saul, God was with him in a special way and protecting him. And of course he was anxious at times. Of course he had challenges, but God was guarding him, and used those experiences as very formative experiences, especially when he was hiding out in the cave and with the people that were gathering around him. These were times that tested his faith, but also when he grew the most. We see in the story of David that when he was in the comfort of the palace, when you would think he was the most secure and the most comfortable, by worldly terms, that's when he had his biggest downfall, which was when he saw Bathsheba. And I would say look up that story, and you can kind of read all about that, right? So walking securely does not mean avoiding anything that could be a risk. It does not mean following the crowd. That's really important here. Walking securely means going through your life journey, but in the frame and the belief that the reality that God is with you, God is helping you, and also that you are seeking wisdom and discernment in finding out which way matches God's will. If it's an important decision, given many guidelines and commandments. Proverbs warns about specific things and situations and what to do in those. But there are very often times situations where it's not so straightforward, and those can be kind of tricky for all of us. So it's important to remember this. It's important to remember that you have the ability to walk securely, and that's important. Not just when you're facing challenges, but all the time. This has benefits for your physical self, your mental well-being, and the spiritual. Because if you're able to walk securely, then you are able to follow God's will for your life. And you're not going to be second-guessing things and worrying. Wisdom and discernment, depending on the translation you use, are depicted as a necklace or something you would wear on the outside, and also it's shown as an inner quality too. A while back, I knew an individual who was on a trip. Not saying this was me, although I think this has happened to me a few times, but they were looking at their navigation, and the navigation, I guess, was old or hadn't updated, and they were just kind of blindly following the navigation, and they ended up in an empty field. In another instance, they ended up at the end of a kind of a dead-end road. Well, the roads had changed, and the navigation did not update. So even though their common sense was telling them that, this looks like this is, the current signs were different and showing that this way was not the way to go, they went down this way anyway, because they were dependent on this navigation, and they weren't using their discernment and their common sense. Of course, when they were telling the story, they said they did it on purpose just to kind of see what, where the navigation would take them. So who knows the entire truth of the story, but I think that's kind of a good illustration for what is going on today. In a lot of instances, we're reliant on technology, which is good, of course, and this is probably something that's a drum that's been beat a lot, or, something we hear a lot about, over-reliance on technology and social media and stuff, and the distracting nature of it, and it pointing you in the wrong direction. But, it just is a kind of a good concrete example of that, that no matter how good the technology is or the artificial intelligence, it's a tool. And, the most important guiding principle of your life should be God, and this ties directly into what people call common sense, discernment, paying attention, because you're not always going to get the answers you're looking for. People pose questions to chatbots, and they get answers that don't make any sense, because it's built on whatever knowledge you put in, whatever knowledge certain individuals want you to have about certain things, and it's not based on the wisdom that is in the Bible in all circumstances. I'm sure there are some instances where it aligns, but you can kind of get the point there. And there's real opportunity for us to walk securely in life. So practically, how can we do that? Well, read the Bible, Scripture, especially Proverbs. That's why we're looking at Proverbs to begin with, because we want to take the detour, as we say, around the wide way, the path that leads to an unfulfilling experience, and find the path of life and abundance. Pray, that's a big one. Extremely important. Meditate. Practice, and when I say meditate, it also means meditating on Scripture, but also practicing unplugging and disconnecting. Taking those moments to really listen, and it's not something that's necessarily easy to explain outside of using a lot of cliches and such, but it's very necessary to do, and when you do it, you'll really see the benefit of it. And finally, don't be afraid to go against the crowd, because very often, as we see in the Bible and in many stories, very often, whether it's David, whether it's Moses, whether it's Jesus is the ultimate example, going against powerful worldly forces. And I'm not saying in a violent way, but, going against that survival instinct to blend in and to not stick out. Now, this takes wisdom, of course, because there are instances where you want to, as Jesus says, be innocent as sheep and wise as serpent, or I'm going to butcher that passage, so I'm not going to quote it directly, but everything has its time and season, so that gets back to wisdom, having the discernment to know when to take action on certain things, and when the time comes to take action, having the courage to take action, which gets back to walking securely. If you're walking securely, you feel secure, you're secure, and you are secure because God is with you, helping you, then it will be very easy for you to take action. I say easy in that it would be an easy choice, or at least a lot of the resistance that we would normally have, we would not have, because we would know that we are walking securely. Well, that's all for now, and keep checking in. We'll be posting a video every week as we're going through Proverbs, and we have gone through the earlier chapters, and I will find those videos, and if I can find them, and post them, but we're going to try to get one of these videos out every week, post a clip of the Bible study that we have, the discussion that we have, and hope you have a good week wherever you are, whenever you're watching this, and there is more to come. God bless.